This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 396 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's 3-1 win away to Arminia Bielefeld, and of course the very uneventful 2-0 cup win against FC Ingolstadt, and we will preview a harrowing matchup against 1. FC Cologne. Isn't that exciting? For all that and more joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
I am doing well, Stefan. How are you?
I'm doing fairly well myself. I thought it was sort of relaxing to watch Dortmund in the last couple days. You know, especially the Ingolstadt match was like a nice little snooze fest, just what I needed, because all the action in the DFB Pokal was provided elsewhere. But maybe more on that a little later. In the meantime, though, we do have a sponsor.
Wir sind komplett schuldenfrei, wir zahlen keinen einzigen Euro an Zinsen.
And this episode is sponsored by the Borussia Dortmund Fan Club. London podcasts for the BVB perspective from the island can be found at macfadgen.podbean.com. I will put the link in the show notes. Their latest episode is with BVB fan and book author Bruno Reker, so go check that out. If you want to sponsor an episode, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information. And now, Matthias, it is time for you to tell me what happened in Bielefeld on the Alm, or at the Alm, I don't know, auf der Alm.
I guess it would be on the Alm, which is not a bad little stadium, actually. You can always get a nice little walk when you get there through the different neighborhoods in Bielefeld. It's a neighborhood stadium. It's very interesting. It's not in the middle of the city. Not that Bielefeld's a big city, but it's kind of on the outskirts in the suburbs.
Yeah, just like the Westfalenstadion. It's also a neighborhood stadium.
It is.
In my flat in Dortmund, it's literally walkable distance. You know, that's a 6-7 minute walk. So it's in my neighborhood at least.
Yeah, but Dortmund maybe a little bigger than Bielefeld because Dortmund does exist,
right?
But Bielefeld definitely did exist against Borussia Dortmund.
It does exist.
It does, yeah. It was kind of a match as to be expected. Marco Rose, following your advice in terms of lineup, in fact, 100% what you had mentioned on the previous episode.
Well, I need to clarify things. There needs to be a disclaimer here. I correctly guessed the lineup. Marco Rose does not take any advice from me at all because I do not want to be held responsible for Erling Haaland's injury. That's all on him. Not me, the Yellowwallpod host. I have nothing to do with that. There's no connection. If there are two dots and you connect them, unconnect them. Okay? I'm innocent, and I was just lucky. That's it.
I mean, you did say that your flat in Dortmund is walking distance to the stadium, so I think we can connect the dots.
No.
No, but it. You know, in the beginning, it was a little uncomfortable for Dortmund. You could kind of see that they were getting used to each other. Pongracic almost delivering Bielefeld a goal. But he actually then was the one with the decisive block in the end. So, I mean, he did track back.
Dortmund legend Yanni Serra delivering here is...
No.
It's kind of funny that on both ends there were former Dortmund players that sort of delivered for Dortmund. On the one end it was Yanni Serra, who he had the turnover against Pongracic, but couldn't finish. Probably should have, arguably a must if you are Arminia Bielefeld, because there are not that many chances that present themselves. On the other end, I think was it Pieper who gave away the penalty, or was it? I think it was Robin Hack actually, but almost Pieper also had a couple of mistakes. Anywho, interesting situation by Pongracic. So When
yeah, it was uncomfortable. You could just tell he wasn't comfortable. I mean, but then what really made a big difference was when Dortmund's best central defender, Manuel Akanji, was moved to the center of the back three, and then it got much, much, much better. Dortmund were significantly more solid. The build-up play was much better. There was more energy in the side. And, you know, the other advantage that Dortmund had is that former Schalke player Alessandro Schöpf plays for Bielefeld, and he can score about as many goals for Bielefeld as he could for Schalke, because he also had a pretty good look at goal. I want to say it was in the second half, and completely fluffed it and fell down, and just, yeah, it was not a good look from the former Schalke player. But I think overall, Dortmund definitely deserved to win the match. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You know, you could, it's kind of one of those situations where, yeah, Dortmund got another penalty. That's okay. But overall, I don't think anybody can really complain about the results. You know, Kramer, the head coach for Bielefeld, said we had 5 or 6 clear opportunities. I think that's a little generous. If we would say clear opportunities. Overall, Bielefeld did have a lot of shots. They had 16 shots overall. They actually outshot Dortmund. But it wasn't necessarily that they had 5 or 6 clear opportunities. I will give them 2. Not including, obviously, the goal that they scored at the end, which was, of course, a penalty and ruined my scoreline prediction, which I'm still very, very annoyed about. But Dortmund dominated the match. They won most of the tackles. They had almost 70% possession. But what was interesting, Bielefeld did have 7 corners versus Dortmund's 2. So it was an odd game of Dortmund deserved victory and dominance, but Bielefeld were in the game, and I think played well enough for a team that nobody really expected to win this match. But we have to say, Mats Hummels and Jude Bellingham, you know, when Hummels scored his goal, I was like, okay, that is the goal of the season. And then Bellingham was like, no, this is going to be the goal of the season. And then we just have to wait for Haaland to come back. He's going to do something ridiculous. But Hummels and Bellingham both with absolutely fantastic goals.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see that the penalty was taken by Emre Can. He told Marco Reus that he just felt he had a good feeling, and I think it was slotted away calmly. When I was watching this, I was like, oh God, he's just gonna like hoof it out of the stadium. But no, really calmly taken penalty. And I don't know, I've seen people that said this was a very soft penalty, but I disagree. I think that Hack sort of got 2 players fouled at the same time, including Marlon, and to me, that was a pretty clear-cut penalty. And
absolutely.
So at this point, I think the lead was also deserved. Marlon had already a couple good chances beforehand. And overall, just quickly to revert back to the lineup, the back 3, and then having Marius Wolf and Torgen Hazard as the wing backs. I thought this helped Dortmund's structure immensely, because Dortmund, I think they ended up with 69% possession. It was a little higher for most part of the game, but in the end, Bielefeld gained some more ground in that regard. But I felt like the passing angles that Dortmund needed to retain the ball and not lose the ball in silly places, like Pongracic did. But I feel like that's more of an individual mistake, because he just wanted to dribble forward and just took risk and was not rewarded. But otherwise, I think that this was a good systematic switch to sort of account for the lack of playmakers on the field, like Guerrero and of course like Haaland. So I'm fairly happy the way this whole thing panned out. I thought that Bellingham obviously had a massive game. Julian Brandt looked fairly good, and even Emre Can had a good match. So, Reus and Malen obviously, especially Marco Reus is, I think right now in a really good form. Malen had definitely a better game than he did have in Amsterdam, which I guess was important. But yeah, I really hope that he would get a goal in the absence of Erling Haaland, which I don't know, might be for the rest of this year, which is obviously devastating news for Dortmund. And of course, it was enough to beat the likes of Bielefeld and Ingolstadt, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to beat other teams. Last time Haaland missed, it was Lucien Favre's end of the stint. So we'll see how Dortmund make up for him now, but I'm not all that jazzed about it, to be honest, because I feel like this injury might have been somewhat preventable. I feel like he should have and must have given him more minutes of rest and maybe not start him in every game and every situation. He is, unlike Robert Lewandowski, not married to a karate Olympian who knows exactly how to treat his body so that he doesn't pick up several injuries, because I think Anna Lewandowska plays a major part in the role of her husband being all-time fit and ready, and Erling Haaland does not have this ace up his sleeve, if you will. So I think Dortmund need to be much more careful with him. I think that Marco Rose said something along those lines, that they will leave no stone unturned in making sure that the injury malaise going forward will abate. So yeah, that's something obviously I'm looking at that Dortmund need to correct, because if you have a world-class superstar amongst your ranks, I just saw a commercial on ESPN for ESPN Plus or the Disney Bundle or whatever it was, and there were highlights from all kinds of sports that are featuring in ESPN. And, there was only one or two soccer references, and one of them was Erling Haaland. So, just for a broad American audience, I feel like that really messages you how important he is in world football. And with that, how important he is in Borussia Dortmund's ecosystem. And having him out for this long of a stretch really does annoy me. To me, it's really vexing that this happened. And I don't know who the commentator was for this game, but I think he said that his injuries, the one he previously had, where I think he got a knock by Mats Hummels, and the abductor or hip flex or whatever it's called, the muscle injury he has suffered now, is somehow connected. And I'm very annoyed. I don't know how you see that situation. I wanted to actually get the back on raving about Hummels' goal in Bellingham, but I feel like this Haaland subject got the best of me. But so what's your opinion on that before we move back to the praising?
Well, I think you're correct in your assessment. I mean, Erling Haaland is a very young player. He is reckless, not in a negative sense. The way he plays at 100% all the time, always very, very driven, highly professional also in his training, it naturally lends itself to probably more injuries. I mean, Lewandowski, when he was young, had more injury issues than he does as an older player, which is a very interesting phenomenon if you think about it. I mean, the problem, and why I'm not going to come down too hard on Marco Rose on this, is because we've been now saying for 2 seasons at the minimum that Dortmund need a quality backup striker. And
fine. Paint me as the bad cop here. It's fine. You can play.
No. I mean, to say, I know, Marco Rose, we're all going back to the Mainz game where he said, well, he kept him in there because of set pieces. Well, if that's the case, shuffle your lineup around a little bit and bring in a big-bodied central midfielder or defender in that case. I mean, that you can do the same thing by taking him off at a point in time when Dortmund had won the match. So you just go to shutdown mode, and then that problem wouldn't have presented itself. Be that as it may, I think Dortmund still need to look.
I'm not going to blame Marco Rose, but here's how I could have done better.
Yes, I know. Well, again, I think I can see kind of both, because the problem you also have is, who are you going to put on instead of Holland? Stefan Tigges?
Of course, it's a problem. Of course, there is shortage, but nevertheless, you need to handle the resources you have at your disposal still with some care. People are already, looking through their fingers what happens to Jude Bellingham next, because he is playing every freaking minute, and obviously that's enjoyable, and he's hugely important, as these 2 games alone showed how good he is. But nevertheless, the kid needs some rest as well. If he has a torn muscle fiber and is out for weeks, on top of all the other injuries we now already have, it's going to be catastrophic for Dortmund. So please give him some rest somehow. And the cup match, for example, would have been a nice opportunity.
No, I agree. I mean, what do? If you rest Bellingham, you put Can in that box-to-box role. He's also a box-to-box player. Is he as dynamic as Bellingham in a playmaker sense? No, but I'd play Can there. Obviously, you need Dahoud to come back. I mean, there are a few other moving parts in that type of scenario. Again, I miss Thomas Delaney. But in terms of a striker, I think now Dortmund really need to look at someone to bring in the winter. Tigges is not it. He proved that again against Ingolstadt, where he can't score against them. He was a little unlucky. He should have scored. But, he's a 3rd division striker. At best in his career, he's a 2nd division striker. Moukoko, again, very young. He's already been injured a few times now.
Yeah.
And he's not a Holland replacement. He's a completely different type of player. And you're going to have to completely change how you play with him. So the question is, who do you bring in to be a backup to a 21-year-old superstar that when he's fit, you're not going to see a lot of time? That's always the problem. Or you bring in someone in January and say, hey, listen, you're going to be behind Haaland. He's probably going to leave after this season. So it's your job to win it for next season. I think that's something you could look at in January. There are a few names being floated right now for that, but I think that is a definite area that Dortmund need to look at to strengthen here in a couple of months when we're looking at the winter break. So, but I agree with you. I mean, we're at the point with Dortmund where, given the amount of injuries, there's not a lot of rotational, options that are really available to Marco Rose. You look at all the injuries that are there in central midfield, where we thought Dortmund were stacked. Well, now they're not. Fullback, where Dortmund technically have 6 players. Meunier, it was nice to see him back on the pitch against Ingolstadt. I like Marius Wolf. I think he's actually playing really well as a right wing back or fullback or winger utility player, because also play on the left. Granted, when he plays on the left, he's more an inverted wing back than a true wing back, because he just constantly cuts inside because he's right-footed.
It worked.
But it works. It works. He's got the one thing about Marius Wolf is he understands his role as a role player in a very good team. He performs it well, and he's pretty disciplined. He gets given a job and he does it. And that's really what you want from someone like that. And unlike, say, Nico Schulz, who I think is just, aside from
Nico Schulz is assigned a job, and what does he do? He tears his muscle.
Well, he's not a great player. The problem is, I think Nico Schulz is now also in that head game of he's down. And to get out of that headspace is really, really difficult. So, I think there's not going to be a lot of rotation for the next few weeks until more and more players come back. Again, the nice thing is Thomas Meunier is back, so you can plug him in at right back on the weekend now, and then Marius Wolf or Torgan Hazard on the left wing back position. Yes, you have Paslak that you could plug in if you needed to, but just don't. Please don't. Let's just not do that. I'd rather see Akanji or Pongracic at a fullback position at this point. So, yeah, I think Dortmund had 2 good matches now to build up the confidence in the current formation that Marco Rose is forced to play ahead of a match that's going to be very, 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 very difficult.
Yeah, no, I think it helps Dortmund, though. I like the change to the back 5. And I like that it happened successfully. And obviously, Bielefeld are a team that are 17th in the Bundesliga that I think are still winless. And, but we've seen it so many times that Dortmund then slip up, away to Darmstadt or away to Paderborn. And those have been one of the most frustrating losses in the Dortmund's history over the last, 4, 5, 6 seasons, where they just completely slipped up, where they were caught with their pants down. And you could fear, especially coming off this loss, this drubbing in Amsterdam, and then also, having to travel away to Bielefeld, that maybe they were not playing to their, abilities. But I think we can safely assume that at least the quote-unquote mentality bullshit is not coming up, and that's reassuring, because Dortmund are still in second place, and other teams in the Bundesliga have slipped up this weekend. And if you look at the table now, obviously Dortmund are still this one vexing point behind Bayern Munich, but then you have Freiburg in third place, and I think it's already 4 points away from Leverkusen, then 5 away from Union Berlin, and then it's 7 away from RB Leipzig, and even 8 from VfL Wolfsburg, who were sort of the competitors along Dortmund recently. So to me, that's really important, especially going into a very difficult period of the season where I assume Dortmund will drop some feathers, as we say in Germany. So with that being said, Matthias, I think that Dortmund actually, at least if you look at Champions League qualification, are in a very good spot thanks to a win like against Arminia Bielefeld. And I think it's even just made sweeter by the fact that Mats Hummels scored a worldie and Jude Bellingham turned into Leo Messi for a second there, where everything slowed down and he's faking players out and then slotting it away. And what can we even say about Jude Bellingham, Matthias? If you look at his performance against Bielefeld, and then the absolute dominant performance and being sort of the maestro of the entire team and the best player out there against Ingolstadt.
Well, I mean, the fact that he's still a teenager is still kind of freaky. In the summer, it was always reported again and again what he wants to improve is his finishing. I think he's improving his finishing. I think we can say that. And the question then remains is, how long do we get to enjoy him at Dortmund before the Premier League clubs start knocking hard?
I, as the Yellowwallpod host, I'm not asking this question whatsoever. I'm just living in the here and now. So you can do your stuff, but it's not the question.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's exceptional. And, I've heard some people say, well, it's not a good sign if Dortmund are relying so much on a teenager. Well, I mean, if you have another generational talent.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's not like Dortmund's relying on a teenager that no one has seen or heard of. I mean, Birmingham retired his number. They knew what he was. And so this is one of the best players in the Bundesliga and Europe right now. Age doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Holland
he's a
is
veteran
one of
teenager.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Holland. I mean, Holland is extremely young, but one of the 3 best strikers in the world, without question. And so it doesn't matter. I mean, when Jadon Sancho was playing at Dortmund instead of sitting on the bench at Manchester United, he was one of the best wingers in the world. even when he was younger. And so age just really doesn't matter. And what Bellingham is showing is it's exceptional. It's absolutely exceptional. And all credit. I know I kind of criticized Dortmund's front office because of lack of a backup striker, but all credit to them for getting Jude Bellingham in at 17 and going, no, this kid is really going to be something, when the majority of Dortmund fans never saw him play because they don't watch the championship,
let alone
and had
Birmingham.
no idea what he was going to be. A lot of hype, but that's about it. And it's incredible, and he's only going to get better, which is really scary to say at this point.
What do you make of the rumors that Dortmund might sign his younger brother, who's 16 years old, Joe Bellingham?
I mean, if it's for no other reason than to keep Jude Bellingham around for 2-3 more seasons, go for it. I don't give a shit. If they do it, it would be kind of awesome. I think given the relationship that Jude Bellingham is building up within Dortmund, with the fan base, with the community, with the team, with the staff, I think his family is also seeing as this is a good place for their son, or sons in this case, to thrive, grow up, mature without the poisonous atmosphere of the English media landscape, specifically around football, the Premier League, and young players, because it is
especially
poisonous.
If you're a player that player of color.
Yes,
they're
yeah.
exactly,
I mean, look at Raheem
nicer.
Sterling.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a Raheem Sterling fan, but the treatment of him, I mean, it's to say it's cringeworthy is an understatement, but the British media landscape has always been deeply toxic, and Germany is just better. I'm sorry, it just is. I mean, yes, we have Bild, but in England you have 20 of those, whereas in Germany you have the Bild, and that's about it. And compared to the English tabloids, Bild is like, FAZ, in comparison.
Also, Jörg Weiler is not on his A game in a very long time. So
no. And so it's a perfect environment to grow up, mature, and become a really good player. And I'm sure Jude Bellingham is looking at Jadon Sancho and what is happening at Manchester United. And given how mature he is and how mature his support network is proving to be so far, then I think that will give him pause and think about it when inevitably the offers will come pouring in this summer or next summer. And if you bring in his younger brother, who I have no idea if he's even capable of playing the sport, okay? I have no clue. But that solidifies that social network around him in a country that is not his, but that he is making his home. I think it's huge. I go for it, man. I think it's only positive.
You know what is crazy? Obviously, Jude Bellingham has a contract till 2025. And if you go on Transfermarkt, obviously the highest valued player is Erling Haaland. Transfermarkt values him at 150 million, but second place is already Jude Bellingham at 70 million. Giovanni Reina is third with 42 million. Then you have Rafael Guerrero with 40 million, and Akanji and Marlon at 30 apiece. So on and so forth. But that really shows how much, value Dortmund have created with just the transfer of Haaland and Bellingham. Obviously, Dortmund is probably not going to get 150 million for Haaland due to a buyout clause that is, rumored to be there and then rumored to not be there. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there exactly, but I'm just really happy to have Jude Bellingham at my club, and I think every Dortmund fan shares this sentiment, because you can after the game, also after the cup match, you hear the fans, when they're done sort of celebrating in front of the stand, you can still hear the Jude. And, it just gives me goosebumps because I feel like it's been a while since Dortmund fans as a collective have fallen in love with a player like this. Also the hype for Haaland is really great. But I feel like the relationship between Bellingham and the fans is something special, and it's only just starting to grow because, of course, they were removed from each other for so long, and you can see the yearning of these players to play in front of fans. So in that regard, at least, it was a little bit sad that only 25,000 people came to the game against Ingolstadt. But I can understand that the hype around football in general after the pandemic is not what it was before, and even though Dortmund switched from 2G to 3G, as we've previously discussed here, it's not like they are selling all the tickets all the time. So I guess Ingolstadt also is just not the biggest blockbuster. So Matthias, since there are not that many things to discuss for the Ingolstadt match, since it was pretty straightforward and Ingolstadt had 10% of possession or so, yes, we can talk about Ranier playing, we can talk about Tigges playing, and what Ranier's dad said about him doing so. But before we do that, or if we even do that, Matthias, please can you fill in the blanks of what's happened in Munich? Because I hear one team at least made it to another round. Also, I've heard KSC have survived. Not sure what that happened there. And of course, another Borussia also in the third round of the cup. So, Matthias, I've not really had the time to pay the most attention. So just tell me what happened.
Well, Stefan, what happened was that Preußen Münster unfortunately lost to Hertha BSC. I think that's definitely the headline there. No, if we look at things that transpired, it's a typical second round of the DFB Pokal, which is a round where a lot of favorites tend to get knocked out. Dortmund's historically hasn't done great. Bayern actually has lost in the second round quite often and against some very low opposition at times. Fürstenbergsreuth, which is now Kräuter Fürth, essentially, as one. But if we just look at it, Schalke got knocked out by third division side 1860 München. So there is a Munich club in the next round of the DFB Pokal, but it is not Bayern.
Huh.
Because well, see, what happened was Borussia Mönchengladbach completely and utterly destroyed Bayern.
Destroyed, you said, like curb stomped or obliterated?
like 5-0. And not only was that not flattering, Gladbach probably could have scored a couple more. They were the better side. Bayern seemed flat. Defensively, they were so easily taken apart. I don't even remember. I can't even think of a game where Bayern were that easily pulled apart. Because it was quite shocking at times. So yeah, Gladbach is through. I mean, if we look at the teams that got knocked out, of course, another one to mention is Bayer Leverkusen, who are now in free fall. They are in a bad state. They lost to second Bundesliga side Karlsruhe SC.
Well, but in fairness to Leverkusen, they had a home disadvantage.
They had home disadvantage, yeah. Karlsruhe SC, who once was the Talentschmiede of the Bundesliga, or of Bayern, if you want to say that specifically in the 90s.
Who came from them? Oliver Kahn is the only one
Oliver
I can
Kahn is one. Michael Sternkopf.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Came from there.
A few
other KSC players, but obviously Oliver Kahn would be the biggest name out of there. But if we look at the clubs that are still in the tournament, RB Leipzig are in barely. They squeaked past 4th division side SV Babelsberg 1-0. And so, I mean,
Leipzig already had like a
Freiburg-
struggle half against Greuther Fürth on the weekend.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, again, no team, a lot of teams weren't that comfortable. I mean, Freiburg needed penalties to get past Osnabrück. HSV, okay, whatever, they're not a relevant club. Mainz
they're relevant to me, they're just not good.
Mainz needed extra time against Arminia Bielefeld, which is actually was a good match. Union Berlin needed extra time to get past Mannheim. Bochum in penalties got past Augsburg. Augsburg are also in free fall right now. So yeah, it was an interesting week of matches. Some good, some bad for some clubs. Very good for Dortmund's next opponent Köln, who handled Stuttgart quite well, 2-0, and are also in the next round. But no Bayern and no Schalke.
No Leverkusen.
And no Leverkusen.
No Wolfsburg.
In the next round. Of course, there's no Wolfsburg because
Still the funniest,
Mark
though.
van Bommel, of course, did 6 substitutions in the first round against Preußen Münster. Preußen then moved on. Wolfsburg has moved on from Van Bommel in the
They
meantime.
have substituted him for Florian
for
Kohfeldt.
Florian Kohfeldt.
How do you see this shrewd business by Jörg Schmatke?
I think Schmatke is going to be looking for another manager before the end of the season. No disrespect to Florian Kohfeldt. Obviously, that is leading up to disrespecting him massively. But I don't blame him for Werder Bremen getting relegated. The problems at Bremen go beyond Florian Kohfeldt. I remember
they go as
when
far as the
everyone
front office that hired Florian Kohfeldt.
Yes. I think I remember when people were bigging up Kohfeldt. It's like, oh, he'll be the next Dortmund coach. I'm like, oh God, no. No, I mean, he's a good coach for a team in the lower third of the Bundesliga, maybe. I'm not high on Florian Kohfeldt. I think Wolfsburg are now just going to keep sliding down. They've got very good players, but obviously very good players doesn't save you from bad results and performances. And so, yeah, I think Wolfsburg, we don't have to worry about them challenging Dortmund or anybody in the top 4 again. I kind of made the joke. I said, Glasner will probably be available soon at Frankfurt, so maybe he can go back to Wolfsburg because that was probably the best marriage in many, many years. But you don't do Schmatke dirty and then get to come back. Jörg Schmatke is not a forgiving type of person. So Florian Kohfeldt it is. I mean, of all the managers that were mentioned, I was actually listening to a podcast. I think it was Football Weekly? I don't know. And Rafa Honigstein was on there, and they talked about Wolfsburg, and he's like, oh yeah, and third on the list, probably very little chance, Florian Kohfeldt. I mean, he's just kind of on that list. And then I think it was like an hour later, it was announced Florian Kohfeldt is the new manager of VfL Wolfsburg.
Maybe that speaks to all the bridges that Jörg Schmatke has already burned.
Yes. I mean, who's left? I mean, I know they talked about Domenico Tedesco.
Oh,
but,
God. It would have been fun, too.
Mean, they're defensively solid. I mean, they were already dire under Glasner. But with Domenico Tedesco. Eesh. But either way, Florian Kohfeldt now at Wolfsburg, so I don't have to worry about them. But overall, the DFB Pokal is shaping up nicely for Dortmund because I think Leipzig on paper are the next best team in there, but Leipzig are not playing that well under Jesse Marsch, which I kind of figured personally. Jesse Marsch, a
lot of teams struggling without Julian Nagelsmann these days. Yeah,
I don't rate Jesse Marsch as a super duper coach. I think he's the second best American coach in the Bundesliga. But obviously they've lost a lot of key players and so on, and it's just they're in a total rebuild mode right now. So I don't see them as a major hurdle for Dortmund. So right now, I hate to say this, the DFB Pokal is for Dortmund to lose at this point. When you look at favorites on paper, Dortmund are the favorites now to win the DFB Pokal. So At least we got that, right?
Yeah. But I really must say, you know, it's obviously a Dortmund podcast, but the way Adi Hütter is managing his team is really impressive to me, because he has instilled a similar culture at Gladbach now that was always visible at Frankfurt, and something that Dortmund immensely struggled with. And obviously the 1-0 loss recently against Gladbach speaks to this as well, is that Gladbach players now are just very brutal. You know, they are very, I don't know if I want to say reckless, but at least there is some cohesiveness added with some, you know, force, if you will. They play a very powerful football. They press high and they follow through on their pressing. And if they do not get the ball, they will get the player. And, you know, I kind of like it. I must say, I like watching it. And, you know, when it was time for Bayern to face Gladbach, I dropped everything else and then turned the TV on, because I wanted to make sure to not miss something special. And oh boy, I think the way that Gladbach just pressed Bayern and then had this vertical play and quick combinations, I think it was, I don't know if you want to call it smash mouth football, but definitely, you know, I think caught Bayern completely by surprise, because Gladbach are a team they traditionally struggle with, but maybe the DNA that Gladbach have right now is not something they had previously to that regard. So, you know, I think Dortmund were a little bit surprised and overwhelmed by it, and Bayern definitely were. And of course, then Gladbach taking a healthy amount of their really good chances they had, you know, given that Manuel Neuer had a couple good saves in between. Yeah, I thought there was a really nice beatdown by Gladbach, and you know, I've read a lot of columns, and I feel like the word I've heard the most is hope that you know, Bayern are still beatable, and maybe it was a good time for themselves to realize how breakable they are. And you know, it was fun to see Bayern players struggle to explain this sort of loss, because you know, we have seen Bayern Munich lose 5-2 in certain cup games, and then in the post-game interview still pretend or you know, assert that they're the better team. This time, this was not the case. And yeah, a lot of head scratching going around at Bayern, and yeah, just kudos to Gladbach of playing this sort of way. And I don't know if you can say it delivers a blueprint to the Bundesliga, because I'm not entirely sure how many other teams can do this to Bayern the way Gladbach did, because I feel like Gladbach just have a really good squad that have just the right skill sets to beat Bayern again and again. End of thought.
I agree.
All right.
I agree. I mean, Adi Hütter might be saving his job because it was a little there for a little bit.
I mean, they did lose against Hertha first before beating Bayern, and you know, it's funny how this Gladbach team can turn on a dime. And I mean, their performance against Dortmund, albeit being a 1-0 winner, it wasn't really, you know, lights out football either. That was a really hard game to watch. Don't get me wrong, but at least they have this fire in them, and that can make up for a lot of stuff. And obviously, if you press high and if you win the ball the way you win, then you just have space to operate. And then Gladbach do have quality players. So, would I say Adi Hütter is the most layered tactical genius in the Bundesliga? Probably not. But I do think that his coaching style does have some merit. And if he manages to have his players fired up and believe in what he's saying, I think that's a positive sign, you know, so kudos to him too.
Yep, I agree. So,
yeah, I feel like we've tiptoed a lot around the upcoming game, because let's just say my hopes aren't the highest right now. Obviously, Cologne are in 8th place in the Bundesliga. You know, they have a 3-4-2 record. They have 13 points to their name, and you know, it's obviously still winless on the roads, and they will visit Dortmund in Dortmund. So there's a tiny bit of hope, but nevertheless, I feel like Cologne have been one of the surprise teams this season under Steffen Baumgart. They have changed dramatically for the better, because Cologne last season really weren't all that. And right now they have only 2 losses to their name. One away to Bayern Munich, where they lost 3-2 and was really close in the end. They might have nicked a point there. And then this really weird, inexplicable, unexplainable 5-0 loss away to Hoffenheim. It's a weird Friday night game, but other than that, they just had a 2-2 draw against Leverkusen in the Rhein Derby, if you want to call it that, where they were 2-0 down and then still rallied back. And of course, a very confident 2-0 win against Stuttgart. So, what are you making of this Cologne side, who right now are not really exactly afraid of anybody? I mean, they've so far played Hertha, they played Bochum, Freiburg. A 1-1 draw against Freiburg, I think, is formidable, considering how Freiburg are playing. And a 1-0 draw against Frankfurt, a win against Fürth. So, did they have the best of the best opponents apart from Bayern yet? Maybe, I don't know. It's really mixed, and I feel like they've been doing okay against a whole array of different teams, except Hoffenheim.
So, I like Steffen Baumgart. Obviously, Paderborn under Steffen Baumgart provided a few headaches for teams.
Weren't you pitching him as a Dortmund coach at some point?
I mean, his style kind of fits to that Klopp mantra of the past. It's a little too much at times. If you look at the beginning against Leverkusen just marched through Köln defensively. Köln were non-existent. They threw everything forward and just left gaps open that Leverkusen so easily exploited. That at that point I thought Leverkusen were gonna blow them away by 5-6 goals, because Köln were playing so naively defensively. And obviously that is a hallmark of what Paderborn did as well. They would press high, they'd be aggressive, they'd be in your face, but then they would just leave these huge gaps defensively, and teams could just tear right through them. I mean, Dortmund tore through them a few times. But the big difference is Baumgart recognized the issues, made some adjustments, and then Leverkusen just kind of, took the foot off the gas. They just, it's like Leverkusen. Yeah, they Leverkusened a little bit, and then Köln just played really, really well. And at the end of the day, you could probably say Köln probably deserved beating Leverkusen, but the way they started the first 20 minutes, yeah, probably not. All in all, if you look at the full 90, because you can't play that naively and expect to win. So I expect this to be a very difficult game, because Dortmund had hard times against Markus Gistol's Köln. Now, I'm going to say this is Paderborn with better players. And that is true. It's a significantly better squad than what Baumgart had at Paderborn.
Well, thankfully,
that
Dortmund never lost to Paderborn. So
yes, and that's the thing. Where Dortmund thrive is if they can lock down defensively and just mitigate build-up errors, which I know is a problem at times. If somebody steps on their toes,
at times, luckily only at times where Dortmund are playing.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at what Freiburg did initially. Freiburg ceded possession, but became very difficult for Dortmund and broke down Dortmund's build-up play early on and got a deserved victory. Ajax did the same thing. And Baumgart's Köln will do the same thing. That is a guarantee. He's not going to sit back, low block like Gistol, and just wear Dortmund's patience thin. He's going to come after them in their face. And if Dortmund can play around that press, they can probably tear Köln apart. If they can't, Twitter's not going to be a fun place. Let's put it that way. This is, I think, a good coach with a decent side, with an Anthony Modeste right now who is hot, who is scoring. and they are coming with confidence into this game. I think Dortmund is too. It's not like Dortmund. If this was right after Ajax, big problem. 2 victories in a row where Dortmund were dominant. And now have gotten that back 3-5 kind of played in a little bit more. They understand what they need to do. I think the timing's a little bit better for Dortmund. But again, this is going to be a very difficult match. I'm going to see it. It's going to be an open match, I believe. And I see a lot of goals. And hopefully Dortmund just score more of them than Köln.
Right. Well, I can maybe just come up with my scoreline prediction right away. I think this is going to be a 3-3 draw. I don't think that Dortmund will leave this field as winners, and I will hope that I'm wrong about this. But I think that Cologne playing the way they are, pressing Dortmund high, is going to be a major problem, because I think that Dortmund are still struggling way too much with this kind of opponent for the stage of their development where they're in. I think that switching the system to a back 3/back 5 mitigates that a little bit. I agree with you. But nevertheless, I feel like Dortmund will struggle from the get-go in this game if Cologne do play that. Because I think Dortmund have made it a habit again where they need to find into a game. Obviously, there was this cracker, was it against Mainz, where Marco Reus scored immediately in the 3rd minute or so. But usually Dortmund need at least a good 20 minutes to really find themselves into a match. And I don't think that Cologne will just allow that to happen without consequence. So I actually expect Cologne to score very early in the game. And the problem is, you mentioned Anthony Modeste. I think he's a bad matchup. As is for Dortmund, because he is a very smart player. He knows how to use his body well, and he's a really good finisher. And Cologne have showed time and time again. I've watched him against Leipzig, for example. They are very good in transition, and if they win the ball in the opponent's half, they usually have a very good idea of how to transition and create good chances with it. So this is a game I'm quite scared of, and the last time I said I was scared of a game was before Ajax, so that didn't bode too well either. And of course, the other guy who I am not looking forward to at all is Marc Uth, former Schalke player, and just loves to score against Dortmund somehow. So yeah, it's I don't know. If you would ask Cologne fans about this game, they are probably terrified, and they, for some reason, don't have the confidence that's maybe deserved for this team. So I know they're very pessimistic, and they've gone through a lot of hurt. But I really like this Cologne team. I think Jonas Hector is playing a really good season as a team captain. And I think Florian Kainz is doing extremely well. I think Andre Duda is a good player who's playing much better than he was doing at Hertha. So if I'm honest here, I think this is a formidable mid-table team that's smelling blood right now. And the other problem is also Cologne right now. I don't think they know when they're really beat. Except for this shellacking in Hoffenheim, if the game is close, if they're down by a goal or 2 or 3, I don't really know. They will just give up and give in, so to speak. So Dortmund will need to be on their toes for the full 90 minutes, and I'm not entirely confident they can do that because of the injury malaise and maybe some tired legs here and there. So this is going to be a really interesting one. I think positive is that Gregor Kobel will be available. He was rested in the cup game. I think it was predetermined that Marvin Hitz was going to play this game no matter what. But seeing him go down in Bielefeld obviously wasn't fun at halftime, and you would worry a little bit. But I think this Cologne team will find many ways to score against Dortmund. There's obviously one big positive for Dortmund is that there's no Marius Wolf for Cologne to flick on set pieces to the back post this time. So Cologne will have to find someone else to do that. It's going to be a really difficult game, and if Dortmund somehow get away with 3 points there, I will be the happiest guy this weekend, because I'm really not expecting it. You know, even though Dortmund are still unbeaten at home, I don't know. My confidence is not as high as maybe can be or should be. I know there are a lot of listeners right now rolling their eyes and thinking, Jesus Christ, Dortmund are still the second best team in the Bundesliga right now, and even with all the injuries, they should be capable of beating Cologne. In general, I agree with this sentiment, but just in terms of timing, I'm not quite sure. I feel like there's more momentum still on that Cologne side. Anything to add, Matthias?
Yes, I think the key thing for Dortmund is going to be in the attacking side, the scoring of goals. I think if Erling Haaland was in the side, Dortmund would blow Köln away. I have full confidence in that. Without him in the side, what we really need to see is Daniel Malen scoring goals. That really needs to start happening more now. I'm going to agree with you in the number of goals scored. I think 6.
42?
Yeah, my gut. I'm going to go more optimistically and say Dortmund are going to win 4-2. I do agree that Köln are going to score first. And I think Daniel Malen is going to score 2 of the 4 Dortmund goals. Just because if Dortmund continue doing what Leverkusen did in the first 20 minutes against Köln, and the counter-attacking prowess of Dortmund with or without Erling Haaland is there. The pace, the creativity, all that is there. I think Daniel Malen will be through on Timo Horn more than once, more than twice, but it'll take him a few shots to score. So I think Dortmund will win this one 4-2. I think it's going to be a very exciting game. It's going to be a game that I am not going to enjoy watching because it'll be too exciting. Sometimes I just like boring games, but I like Köln. I like the club. I like the city. So, I mean, it's one of those games I kind of always look forward to because, like I said, I have a lot of sympathies for
It's a great
FC
Bundesliga
Köln.
matchup. It just is.
It is. It's a nice classic Bundesliga matchup. And so, yeah, I think it'll be entertaining and exciting for the neutrals. I think people are going to lose their shit on BVB Twitter, as they always do, because somehow people expect if Dortmund's not beating everybody by 6 goals, then Dortmund sucks, which they don't. It's a very good team. But don't underestimate Steffen Baumgart and FC Köln. But I saw what happened in the beginning with Leverkusen. And as long as Dortmund don't do Leverkusen, I think they'll win this one. But I do believe Köln will score.
All right, yeah. I should add that Kainz and Zichos are both doubtful with the flu. So if they're out, then it's probably going to be Mereo and Duder, according to Kicker, who will then play in their stead. But otherwise, I don't think they have any major injury. I know Shqiri is out with the fracture, but otherwise, in terms of their most prominent names, they don't really have too many injury worries, to be honest. So yeah. Of course, it's good news that Hazard is back. It's also good news that Meunier is back. Who would have thought that we'd say this at some point? But yeah, I don't know if Dahoud will be available yet. I don't know how long it'll take. I think the press conference is tomorrow, so we'll, I guess, learn more then. And yeah, what else? Yeah, I really would like to know what the ETA is on Gio Reyna's return. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, but it's crazy how many players Dortmund have actually been missing and how much better this team would be. Just imagine this team with every player available throughout an entire season and fitness. We'd be talking about probably a title race right now, and not sort of settling on Champions League qualification. I mean, of course, right now, if you look at the table, you're only 1 point off the lead, but I'm not really feeling it. So there's that. Maybe as the season will progress, but I feel like there are a lot of difficult games upcoming now for Dortmund, and the fact that they don't have Haaland at their disposal is going to be crucial in a very negative sense. I mean, if you just look at the schedule, we play Cologne, then we play against Ajax again, then Leipzig, Stuttgart, then Sporting, then Wolfsburg, and then Bayern, then Besiktas again, and before the end of the year, then you have a little stint against Bochum, Fürth, and Hertha. You should win. Then Frankfurt, who could have recovered since, and I think for the Frankfurt game, Haaland should be back though after the very short winter break I'm just seeing. So this is going to be a very difficult stretch, especially like the next games after the Cologne game. Hosting Ajax will not be easy, and Leipzig right now limping, but Stuttgart also have found ways to harm Dortmund, and Sporting away surely not easy, and who knows what Florian Kohfeldt will do with VfL Wolfsburg, and I'm sure the game in Munich, I think we're actually hosting Bayern, won't be an easy one either. So if we still have a title race to talk about by the end of this Hinrunde, then I'll gladly oblige, but until then I'll stay rather reserved. Anywho, Matthias, I think that's really a wrap now, unless you have anything final to say. If not, please tell our listeners where to follow you on the interwebs.
No, I think that pretty much wraps it up. You can find me on Twitter at Matthias Zug.
Very well, you can find me at Stefan Butzko on Twitter. You can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to subscribe to the show, please do that via YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. If you want to contribute financially and help us with Christmas presents or whatnot, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall. And that's all I have to say for now. As always, thank you for listening, and goodbye.